Daniel Grayson had lived in the city his whole life, but he had never seen a street like Blackmore Lane. It wasn't on any map, and no GPS could find it. He discovered it one night while walking home from a friend's house. The shortest route should have taken him through familiar streets, but somehow, he found himself standing at the entrance of a narrow, dimly lit road that seemed out of place. The street stretched ahead in eerie silence, lined with old buildings that looked abandoned. Their windows were either boarded up or so thick with grime that they reflected nothing. The streetlights cast a weak, flickering glow, barely cutting through the darkness. It was unsettling, but Daniel reasoned that it was just another overlooked part of the city, one of those forgotten places no one talked about. He took a step forward, intending to walk through quickly. The moment he did, everything seemed to change. The air grew heavier, thick with an unplaceable scent, damp wood, rusted metal, and something else, something wrong. The sound of the bustling city behind him faded, replaced by an unnatural stillness. Even his own footsteps seemed muffled. As he walked, he became aware of the buildings around him. Some had old signs with faded lettering, advertising businesses that no longer existed. A tailor's shop, a bakery, a hardware store, places that should have been filled with life but stood empty and hollow. The deeper he went, the more he felt like he was stepping into the past, as if Blackmore Lane had been frozen in time and forgotten. Then came the whispers. At first, they were barely audible, a distant murmur carried by the wind. But as he continued, the voices grew clearer, speaking in hushed tones just behind him. He spun around, expecting to see someone, but the street was empty. The buildings loomed silently, their broken windows like vacant eyes staring at him. Daniel picked up his pace. The street wasn't long. He should have reached the other side by now, but it seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. The further he walked, the darker it became. The streetlights flickered and dimmed, their glow swallowed by the blackness pressing in from all sides. And then he saw them. Figures stood in the doorways of the buildings. Pale, elongated shapes, their faces obscured by shadow. They didn't move, didn't speak. They only watched. Daniel's breath hitched. He forced himself to keep moving, not daring to acknowledge them. His heart pounded as he quickened his pace, then broke into a run. The figures remained motionless, but their presence was suffocating. The whispers returned, now all around him, threading through the air like fingers brushing against his skin. A sound broke through the whispers, a soft, wet thump behind him. Then another, and another. Footsteps. Not the slow shuffle of the distant figures, but something else. Something closer. He didn't dare look back. He could feel it gaining on him, the weight of its presence pressing against his back. His lungs burned as he ran, his legs threatening to give out. The street had to end somewhere, it had to. Finally, he saw it. The exit. The familiar glow of city lights just beyond the last set of buildings. Relief surged through him, but so did terror. Whatever was behind him was right there, so close he could hear it breathing. He lunged forward, crossing the threshold back into the real world. Sound returned in an instant. The distant hum of traffic, the wail of a siren, the murmur of life. He collapsed onto the sidewalk, gasping. When he finally turned to look back at Blackmore Lane, it was gone. In its place was nothing but a brick wall, weathered and old, with no sign that a street had ever been there. Daniel never found Blackmore Lane again. But sometimes, in the dead of night, he hears the whispers. But the nightmare wasn't over. The next few nights were plagued with strange occurrences. At first, it was small things. A shadow in the corner of his eye, a whisper just outside his bedroom door. But then, it escalated. One night, he woke to the feeling of something pressing down on his chest. A suffocating weight, cold and oppressive. He couldn't move. He couldn't scream. Through the darkness, he saw them, figures standing at the foot of his bed. Their faces remained obscured, but their presence was undeniable. He blinked, and they were closer. The whispers grew louder, words forming that he couldn't understand. He struggled against the unseen force holding him down, his heart hammering. Finally, with a sudden gasp, the weight lifted, and the figures were gone. But the feeling remained. Everywhere he went, he felt watched. Every reflection seemed just slightly wrong. His apartment felt colder, more distant. Objects moved when he wasn't looking. He started leaving lights on at night, but it didn't help. Desperate, he tried to find information on Blackmore Lane. He scoured old maps, dug through city records. Nothing. It was as if it had never existed. But then, in an old forum thread buried deep in the internet, he found something. A single post. No username, no date. If you see Blackmore Lane, do not enter. Do not listen to the whispers. Do not run. They remember. Asterisk. Daniel's blood ran cold. His hands trembled as he scrolled down, but there were no replies. No further information. Just those chilling words. The next night, he heard a knock at his door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. He didn't answer. He barely breathed. But when he finally gathered the courage to check through the peephole, there was no one there. Just darkness, and the faint sound of whispering. The next morning, Daniel packed his things and left the city. He never spoke about what happened. Never told anyone why he left. But no matter how far he ran, some nights, he still hears it. A whisper in the dark, calling his name.